Welcome back. So far we've seen how we can stream video from a USB camera and how we can open already existing video files. Now let's see how we can actually draw on video. We'll first learn how to draw a static object, then we'll learn how to actually interactively draw on video. Let's get started. Let's begin by working through how we can draw on a video. Hopefully you notice that the procedure is actually really similar to how we already draw on a regular image. It's just in this case we'll be drawing on a frame. We'll import CV2 and then we'll start the capture. CV2.video capture, and I'm going to be streaming directly from my USB camera. And let's go ahead and grab the width and height of the stream. Remember, we can do this with cap get, and then what we're going to do is pass in here the property we actually want to grab. So in this case, I want to grab capture prop, and it's going to be the frame width. And as I mentioned before, we usually want to cast this as an integer to avoid any errors. So I'm going to copy and paste this line, and we'll do the exact same thing for the width, or excuse me, for the height. So let's capture the height, and instead of saying width here, we'll say height. Okay, so there's our width and height. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be drawing a rectangle onto the actual stream. We'll say while true, grab ret and frame from reading that current capture. And remember, the frame is essentially just a single image. So we can use CV2 rectangle just as we've done in the past. We pass in the frame, and then we're going to pass in the actual coordinates of the first point and the second point. Now, in deciding the coordinates, we're going to be calculating them based off the width and height of the actual current capture. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and start off our first point, x and y, at, let's say, the halfway point of the width and the halfway point of the height. We'll say width //2 and y is equal to height //2. Now the reason I'm doing two forward slashes is because I want to make sure that these x and y coordinates stay as integers, because depending on your operating system, you sometimes get errors if you try passing in a float there. So what I mean by that is, if I were to say, for instance, 10 divided by 5, you'll notice that I get back 2.0. However, if I say 10 //5, I get back an integer 2. So this // allows us to return an integer. That way we make sure these coordinates stay as integers. And we'll do the same thing for the width and height. So what I'm going to do is the width and height of the rectangle, width and height of rectangle, so not of the actual video stream, just of the rectangle, we'll have that be 1/4 of the actual video stream. So we'll say width divided by 4, and then height divided by 4. Again, keeping things as integers. So this is going to calculate the top left corner. And then for the bottom right corner, what we're going to do is say that the bottom right corner will be the x coordinate plus width, and then the y coordinate plus height. And hopefully when we actually draw this, it'll become more clear what this actually ends up looking like. So the frame for point 1, we'll just pass in the x and y we just calculated. And then for point 2, we'll add in the width and height that we just calculated. And you can play around with these values. Right now, we're just basing them off the width and the height. That way, depending on what your USB camera is, you should be able to use this exact same code that I'm using. If you actually know the dimensions that you're recording at, you could pass in straight up values here if you wanted to. Then we need to decide on a color. So let's just make this some primary color. We'll say 00255, and then give this rectangle a thickness, just as we've done before. We'll go just say 4 pixels of thickness. And then once we've actually drawn the rectangle, then we'll show the frame. We'll say frame, show that frame. It's really important that you don't reverse the order here. Otherwise, you'll be showing the frame and then drawing a rectangle on it. You want to draw the rectangle first and then show the frame. Then after that, we'll give a command that allows us to escape from this. We'll say wait key, wait a millisecond, and then we'll give the Q button as our exit button, 0xFF equals ordinal Q, and then we will break out of this. finally, we'll go ahead and release the capture and then say cv2 destroy all windows. Okay, so let's kind of quickly go over what we did here. We're capturing the video. We're grabbing the width and height of the actual video being returned. We decided to set the top left corner at the middle point of the width and the height. And then the actual width and height of the rectangle itself will be a quarter of the whole size of the image. And then we went ahead and drew that rectangle, and then we're showing it the frame after drawing the rectangle on it. So let's run this and see if it works. So there we have it. We can see the rectangle right around here. And what I'm going to do now is hit Q to escape. And then what we're going to show you now is how to interactively draw on a video. So often what we're going to be doing in our course is actually just these X and Y coordinates will be defined by some sort of object detection, such as where it happened to see a face. But just in case you ever want to interactively draw something on a video, we'll go ahead and show you how you can do that. Keep in mind, we don't really do this that often during the course, but I do want to show it because this is now the appropriate time to show that. Okay, so let's get started showing you how you can actually interactively draw on a video. As a quick note, if you get any errors during this process, there's a huge potential for typos here, so please try running our provided notebooks and files first before posting to the Q&A forums if you get any sort of error, because there's lots of potential for typos here. Okay, so here I am at our previous cell. I'm going to delete the stuff we actually don't need, since we're not drawing based on the height and width anymore, and instead we'll be defining it ourselves based on our mouse click. I'm going to delete those lines here, and then I will also delete this rectangle line. So we're just starting with the very basics of capturing a video, displaying it, and then at the end, breaking. What we need to do is define a couple of things. We're going to be defining a callback function, and this callback function is going to be drawing a rectangle. And then we're also going to be defining some global variables. And then on this frame, we're going to be drawing on the frame based off the global variables. And then also past the global variables, what we're going to need to do is make the connection. So connect to the callback. Those are our main steps. Let me quickly show you what the finished product is going to look like before we actually code this out. So this is what the finished product should look like. Notice I'm going to click once left down, and you see this little red circle there. Then I'm going to choose 0.2 for my rectangle, and then it's going to create the rectangle. And if I click again, it'll erase that rectangle, draw a new circle point, and then again, do a rectangle. So that's essentially what we're going to be doing here, interactively drawing. Let's get started. I'm going to hit Q to quit this, and we're going to delete the code I have there because that was the actual code for running this, and we're going to type it out ourselves. Okay, so the callback function. I'm going to start with the very basics here. We'll call it DEF, draw a rectangle. And as always, these callback functions are going to take an event, the X and Y coordinates, and then the flags, and then param. And then right now, I'll actually leave a pass here. Let's define the global variables. The global variables are going to be 0.1 of the rectangle, which will start off at 0, 0, and then 0.2 of the rectangle, which will also start off at 0, 0. Remember 0.1, let me make sure that's a T there. See, already commenting typos. So 0.1, that's the top left. 0.2 is the bottom right. We're also going to create two trackers, top left clicked, and start that off as false, and then bottom right clicked, and also start that off as false. And what these are going to indicate is whether or not I click the point that I intend to be the top left, and whether or not I click the point that I intend to be the bottom right. And as those get clicked, I'll update 0.1 and 0.2. Once these are both true, that means I'm ready to draw my rectangle. Okay, then let's connect to the callback. So we already are capturing this. Let me just put this right here and connect to callback just for organization purposes. So I have my capture, and just as we did for images, I'll create a named window, and I'm going to call it test, and then I will connect this to my callback. We'll say CV2, and we'll set a mouse callback, also on test, and then we'll connect it to that draw rectangle function. And notice here, this is still called frame on imshow, and I want to make sure that name matches, so we'll also call it test. So we've connected to the callback. We have our global variables. The only two steps left is to draw on the frame based off the global variables, and then use this callback function to actually update these global variables. I'm actually going to start by defining how we're going to draw on the frame. That way, this callback function makes more sense. So we'll come over here, drawing on the frame based off the variables. This is what we're going to do. We're going to say if the top left has been clicked, that means top left is now equal to true. And it's up to you how you want to do this. Top left clicked, that's already a Boolean. So all we really need to say is top left clicked colon. But if it's more, or if it's easier for you to read, if you say equals true, you can do that as well. But since it's already a Boolean, to me, this is a little more readable. We'll say if the top left has been clicked, meaning if it's true, I'm going to draw a little circle. This circle is just going to be a little marker for me to kind of keep track of where we are. So I'm going to draw a circle on the frame that I just read in the line above here, frame capture read. That little circle is going to have a center around 0.1. So that means when I actually click for the first time, I need to define 0.1. So if the top left's been clicked, I'll draw a little circle at 0.1. Let's give it a radius of 5. It's up to you how big of a circle. You probably noticed I was clicking that little circle. And let's give it a color. We'll go ahead and have the color be red. So 00255. Remember for OpenCV, it's going to go blue, green, red. So that's why that last one's 255. And let's fill in this circle. We'll say thickness is equal to -1. This is just so I can actually have a visual marker of where I clicked on the top left. Now we'll say if the top left has been clicked and the bottom right has also been clicked, then I'm ready to actually draw my rectangle. By this point, I should have both 0.1 and 0.2 defined. We'll say CV2 rectangle, and I'm going to draw directly on the frame my 0.1, my 0.2, my color choice. Let's just go ahead and also make it red, and then my thickness. In this case, we'll give it a thickness of something like 3 pixels. Up to you again, whatever thickness you want. And that's all I need to do. So this is going to draw a little circle when I click on top left, and when I've clicked both top left and the bottom right, then I'll finish off by drawing my rectangle. So that's step number 3. The last one is how do we actually update 0.1 and 0.2 while we're, and also top left clicked and bottom right clicked. So let's make sure we actually have bottom right clicked. Yep, we're good to go there. Well, I actually need to read in these variables on a global. We'll read in 0.1, 0.2, we'll read in top left click, and we'll read in, bottom right clicked. And I encourage you to use tab autocomplete to save some time. And let's get rid of this pass. There's going to be a mouse click. So we'll say if the event is equal to CV2 event, we'll go with left button down. So once that click that left button down, if top left click is equal to true and bottom right clicked is also equal to true. Again, I could have written this as just if top left clicked and bottom right clicked. So if both of those have been equal to true, that means the rectangle's already been drawn, which means this is essentially the reset. So we want to check first if we're going to reset or not. So this says reset the rectangle, essentially erase the rectangle. So if I want to reset everything, then that means I essentially want to reset the global variables as they are here. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it, meaning I will reset 0.1 to be 0, 0.2 to be 0, and say top left is now false and bottom right is now false. So this is resetting the rectangle, and it checks if the rectangle's already there because the top left's been clicked and the bottom right's been clicked. Okay, so let's say I haven't actually clicked anything yet. That means if my top left clicked is equal to false, then I haven't clicked first. So I'm going to say 0.1 is equal to wherever I clicked, which is going to be at the x and y passed back by that callback. So 0.1 is now equal to x and y, and I will update this to say, yes, I did actually already click top left. Notice here the differences between when I'm using double equal signs versus single equal signs. So I'm assigning top left as now true. Now that top left click is true, it means 0.1 has been defined, which means top left clicked is going to be true here. So I'm going to draw a circle based off just 0.1. Now, if I've already clicked top left, but I haven't clicked bottom right, then I have a third situation. And then finally, what I'll say here is elif bottom right clicked is equal to false. Then take point 2 and set it equal to xy. And then set bottom right clicked equal to true. Notice here how this last one is elif. That way it works in conjunction with the top left being clicked. So now, after running through this, I should have top left clicked as true and bottom right clicked as true, meaning we've set both point 1 and point 2. These are both now true, meaning this is going to execute top left clicked and bottom right. They've both been clicked, so I'll draw a rectangle with point 1 and point 2. Let's run this and see if it works. So I run this, it's connected to my webcam right now. I'm going to click once with my left, so it looks like I have the circle there. Let me click again, and now I've drawn the rectangle. Let's see if redrawing a new rectangle works. I click over here, that rectangle has now been reset to 0, 0, and then I click over here, and it looks like my rectangles are working just fine. Okay, so that's all there is to it. Let me quickly do a review of everything we've done. Keep in mind, again, we won't really be interactively drawing on too many videos, but all we're doing here is we set the callback function, it's checking for events, it's having some sort of logical operation with these variables to keep track of things. It has these global variables. We do the connection, and then based off those global variables that are updated in the callback function, we can then draw on the frame. We want to make sure that we draw on the frame first before we show it. All right, that's it. If you're getting any errors, please make sure to run our provided code directly because there's lots of potential for typos here. Thanks, and we'll see you at the next lecture.